Welcome back to the Journey Podcast. I'm your co-host, Emma Jackson.
And I'm Jose. Listen, before we start this episode, 70% of you guys out there aren't subscribed to the channel. Why? Why is that, Emma?
I don't know. Maybe they don't like us. Even
We're
though
so likable.
we are so likable and the content we provide is so useful.
Like today's episode about business structure.
Yeah, we have talked about what it takes to actually come up with an idea, but now it's time to talk about the reality of starting a business.
Maybe they don't want to know.
Yeah, we should gatekeep.
Yeah, that's why they're not hitting the subscribe button right now.
Okay, well, if you want, you can stay tuned. But really, if you're watching the rest of this video, you should be subscribed.
I'm so excited to talk today on the next step.
Yeah, now that we've found the idea, this is perfect timing because we are deep in this right now with the pomade that we're putting together to actually launch.
And then business structuring, like the actually complex legal structure of a company is something that's super interesting to me, and a lot of people don't know.
And also just the understanding how to build a business plan and why a business plan is important, because anyone can Google how to build a business plan, but understanding the actual components, I don't know, I think that's pretty valuable. And also how to use AI as a tool, because you did, right?
In this project I did. I used ChatGPT to help run summarize and kind of fine detail my ideas on the business plan.
So, okay, how did you use, I want to know specifically what kind of prompts you use to get ChatGPT to help you out.
Okay, let's explain why I use ChatGPT, right? At the core, if I was starting a business from scratch, right, with only $10,000 budget, I don't have the luxury of time to spend kind of like formalizing a fancy 20-page business plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can use a tool like ChatGPT to help streamline the process as fast as possible. So some of the prompts I use, like, hey, I need you to write a business plan, lengthwise about 5 pages. And these are going to be the component: executive summary, financials, yada, 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 right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then in each little summary, I expanded like 2 or 3 sentences, which were my thoughts. And then at the end of the prompt, I'll put like, please expand on these topics. And then it will kind of expand. I'll copy and paste that into a Google Sheet. I'll read what it wrote. And I'm like, okay, I agree with this. I disagree with that. I think we should add this to it. Then I take that same paragraph, put it back in ChatGPT, say expand it again. It did it again. Did a couple versions of it until we get into a product that I was really in my brain into the paper. Then I was like, summarize it in a condensed like 2 or 3 sentences. Boom.
No way. So you're using ChatGPT as a tool to just expand your idea and then to condense it, and not necessarily to, you have the idea. You're not asking it for the idea. You're just asking it for the structure and the editing.
Think of writing a business plan sometimes is like writing a grant. You know, there's a structure to it. There's a language in there, right? You want the business plan to be persuasive, right? Because if you're giving it to a bank or to an investor, you're trying to sell your idea, you're trying to sell your plan, but at the same time, it's a tool for you as well, right? Mm-hmm. For you to chart your ideas down, kind of figure out every single problem you probably can think about in that moment when you're creating it. And what better way to do that than seeing like a different perspective through a different program, right?
And you did this version specifically for me, right? And because
100%. Because if it was for me, I wouldn't have a business plan, because business plans, I think after when you launch a company, it just goes to crap. But this particular business plan, I wrote it for you just so we can be on the same page where I'm thinking wise. Yep. I've learned that if you have a team, if you have a business partner, communication is the key to success, right? But the way that we communicate sometimes can be a little bit difficult because we speak different languages. But a common way to speak is by, hey, this is what the information I have. It's not fully thought out yet. I'm still in the developing phases. And when the product goes live, that shit might go out the door. But we can always reevaluate. The core things of the business plan that should be kept is like the conclusion paragraph where you know where you're going to be. And then the executive summary where you're like, this is the main vision. Everything else in the middle is projections and estimations. Maybe the structuring of how you're actually going to fulfill the product and kind of deliver the product is probably core, but it might also pivot. But if I share with you where I want the business to go, and I share you my overall high vision, we have a basis to start working and start driving traffic that direction.
I think it's totally fine that you write a business plan knowing that it's going to inevitably change. But I think what is so important is that you're giving yourself dedicated time to think through each one of these pieces. Because if you actually sit down and think through, how am I going to market this pomade? If you actually sit down and think through what your possible sales could look like, when you start to push yourself into that direction and put yourself in that future seat, you start to already come up with, I need to be doing things a little differently right now.
When I got to the financial, for you guys don't know this, right? I spent all night writing this business plan. I think I was up to actually I didn't go to sleep.
Jose doesn't do things in stages. He does things all at one time.
Yeah. But when I got to the financial part of the business plan, I'm trying to put in like estimated costs, projections, because at the end of the day, it's like we're doing a massive experiment. I'm guesstimating quantities and stuff like that, and how much sales we're gonna do depending on a couple different factors. The original model of the business plan was to do like a private label or a white label system,
Mhm.
right? But the quantities to purchase didn't match with the budget we have at
And
$10,000.
since you went through the process of
Mm-hmm.
actually putting together your business plan, you ran the numbers and you're like, wait a second,
This
this is
this
not
paint
gonna
it
work.
doesn't work. So we had to reformulate the whole business. So in that moment, we had to like legit just kind of like scrap it. How we if this is the idea I want, how I'm gonna make this happen, and that's why a business plan is really useful.
So now that you have your business plan, obviously in our case, we already have our team set up. We have, a marketing team ready to go. We have our lawyers. But think back to when you first started your first business. I mean, at what stage do you want to get a lawyer involved, if at all?
So in this business plan, there's a section that I put for like legal, right? And it kind of talks about what the structure I want the company to be, or what how this product falls in within an existing company that I already own. But I would involve legal right off the bat, right? Because at the end of the day, I probably am not the expert to tell myself, hey, this is the way that this company should be structured. I didn't know this back in the
Ooh,
day.
yeah. And something that I learned that you actually helped me learn too is it's not just about, so there's two big factors to consider when you're structuring your business is, are you protected from a legal perspective? That's the benefit of having an actual business, whether it's an LLC or a C corp. It's these layers of protection. And then the other factor is if you actually get into a, tax planning situation, is planning for how much you're going to make, because certain structures of your business can really, really affect the tax ramifications. So if you
100%.
have someone like a lawyer and also potentially like a tax planner, but even just a business lawyer to help you with the structure, I mean, they can really determine a lot. Tell me about how you
That
break down what structure to have.
I know I you just pretty much nailed it. There's another factor too is how much money you're potentially gonna make and how that's gonna cap. For example, in real estate, using real estate as an example, there is like that $1 million rule that every single LLC should hold. Um, you want to keep it around $1 million of worth of property value. Of course, you can bring it up to like 5 million, 6 million, but there's an asset protection logic behind that. That if in case that that particular LLC gets sued, something happens, it's only affecting one or two properties, and you're only gambling about $1 million worth of loss,
Hmm.
and you can spread out your insurance policy pretty much like you got a couple different $1 million stashed in a couple different companies that they're not fully attached to you. So that same logic can be applied to the product based business, right? So when we come into like we're estimating this product base the first year into 1.6 million. Cool, let's start with an LLC and let's do an election for an S corp, right? But if this product line we're just gonna do a fully passive and there's not gonna be very much employees, we could just do like and we're gonna make less than $40,000. We can keep it a traditional LLC. And then if we're projecting this is gonna do like $10 million in sales the first year, we might want to start thinking about a C corp at that moment in time. Depending on the financial goals and projection, it's
Hmm.
a pretty good indicator of which cap you're gonna be. And then understanding, like you were saying, how is that gonna affect you from a tax point of view? How is that gonna affect you as an asset protection? That's
Yep.
another big factor because the taxes on each entity is different. From an LLC, it's a pass through, so you're gonna get hit through. But a C corp, it's its own little baby. It pays its own little taxes. You get to pay your own taxes, but you don't have to pay corporate taxes
Yep.
from yourself. The company pays that.
And the other thing I've learned is that it's much easier to step up in complexity than it is to step down. So
100%.
if you are just starting out, and even if you think this is going to eventually be big, but for the next couple of years, it may just be in that $1 to $5 million range or whatever. Maybe you start with an LLC and then you can actually restructure your company as a C corp.
Another thing,
But going from a C corp to an LLC is hard.
I don't think you could do that
Yeah.
technically.
So, but I just think it's important for people to know that you can step up, because I didn't know that.
Yeah, sometimes too, you want to your business. There's a lot of different strategies. Like for us, right? We have the ability to segment outwards a lot of our industry. Right? We run a marketing company. We could take, let's say, this podcast, right? This business, and this podcast generates its own type of revenue from ads, sponsorships, all that stuff, and the revenue is generating is like, let's say, 1 or 2 million. We could take this business under our corporate structure and create another LLC and move it completely over there. We still technically own it. We still are connected, but it's his own entity at that moment in time.
Hmm.
C corps and the way your lawyers and your tax strategies, your tax attorneys kind of work, you can create really complex structures to best benefit you. And the reality is you don't have the knowledge. I don't have the knowledge. They have the knowledge. They know the tax code better than anybody.
So how did you find your first business lawyer? Because I'm going to be honest, it was a struggle for me. I didn't even know what to look for.
Uh, when I found my first business lawyer, it was through a buddy of mine at the barbershop. I met RG. RG is not my business lawyer, but he's an estate lawyer. And then I was having problems with the state of Indiana, and we are trying to do some filings. And I was like, I need a lawyer to kind of understand the next rounds of these things. I got introduced to Daniel, and when I met Daniel, like I'm very skeptical. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and he isn't a crazy little older man. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to quiz him, like, hey, this is my industry. Like, what do you really actually know about my industry, and how can you really help me? And then he pretty much schooled me, like 5 minutes. Like, you don't know crap. Like, I'm schooling you right now.
It's like I went
Um,
to law school for this. Like, chill
yeah,
out.
not even law school. Like, he just specialized in business. He's a business
That
lawyer,
was the biggest thing. I
corporate law.
think I was looking for just a lawyer in general, knowing that I needed to have one, but you should look for a corporate lawyer because even if you take an hour or two of their time, and yes, they can be expensive, but when I tell you it pays dividends. And a lot of times they'll do free consultations and they'll work with you. So if you are just completely transparent about your finances, before I started working with you, I was working with a business lawyer who honestly liked working with small businesses, and it's kind of like a financial advisor. They appreciate getting in on the ground floor
Hmm.
and then working up with you.
Another well, very important point to make is like if you think about Tesla right now, right? Elon Musk, right? The whole situation he has going on with his bonus compensation of like $36 billion that the stakeholders, the shareholders approve, his company approved, he approved because it was a commission structure and nobody thought he was actually going to make the metrics, get that type of bonus for that compensation. That those lawyers and that court is fighting. That's a whole different like corporate law situation in the state that it was found in, which I think was Delaware, and that's being handled in that particular state. That lawyer needs to know the corporate law in that particular state.
Mm-hmm.
He's flirting with moving the company to Texas, which is a whole different corporate law. It's a whole different legal structure, and it's like different courts it needs to talk about, like courts that the filing needs to be fought. When you're looking for a corporate lawyer, that's part of the consideration. Where you're filing a company, Katie fight in these courts. He's licensed to be in these type of courts. You know what I'm saying? So that's very, very on the front foot of your mind when you should be looking for a lawyer. At the end of the day, when I told you, right, when you look for your business lawyer, find somebody relative in your age market, right? 10 years above your age, right? 20 to 30, 30 to 40. Understand that they're still hungry, they still want to know, but they have a good foundation, they got a good track history. They can school you in your industry a little bit. But at the same time, if you're getting sued and they were the attorney across from your desk, which they make you a little scared, you know what I'm saying? Like crap, I'm screwed. You know what I'm saying? Then
And if
I'm
so, maybe that's the kind of person that you want on
exactly.
your team.
The secret is I don't think there's a right or wrong way to start a business. Do you have any secrets? Any
Well,
secret sauce?
no, I think just understanding the steps, the order that I have is really just the business plan first
Okay.
because it forces you to actually do the pre-thinking. And then once you do things like you've done your projections, you have an idea of how to structure your business, right? If I estimate 1 to 5 million in sales, I'm going to do an LLC, and then I know I can contact my legal counsel and they can get that set up for me, right?
Yeah.
So that's the steps for me, but there's a couple of other just small things I want to add if you are when you're in the setting up stage that we did, for example, for the special project, which can I announce the name? Yes or no?
I like it.
Okay, so we'll do a whole little
Need to
bit
buy
on,
the main today there.
yes, no, before it goes live for sure. But the name for this is Brokey. And in our naming process, there's the creative side of it where we wanted to pull something from your Puerto Rican heritage, but there's also the side where it needs to be something that is easy for people to say and spell, but unique enough that it's not already been taken. That's really hard. And I say unique enough because a lot of businesses will just pick a random name. And that's fine if you're a mom and pop shop. They pick, sometimes they even just find a photo online. They're like, yep, this is my logo. And they have no rights to that. But if you want to scale it all, if you want to sell online, if you want to actually run a legitimate business, then you really need to be checking, is this trademarked? Is this copyrighted? Because otherwise you can be sent cease and desist letters and you can be forced to shut down. So part of our search in this like business plan process was you came up with the idea for the product, the background. We actually did research on the name before we actually narrowed it down.
Mm-hmm.
we not only look, you can just go online and search trademarks, and it just has to be within your industry. Like it's okay if there's a brokey for some other industry, but in specifically hair care, we want to make sure that it's unique. And on top of that, we search for domains and social media profiles, because boy, oh boy, you could have the best name in the world, but if that domain is taken and you can't buy it, it's just such a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of, for me,
Your
the
steps?
pre-planning steps in getting a business
So
started.
mine's like I have the idea in my head. And if I'm actually gonna write a business plan, then I write a business plan. But before I even touch a business plan, I write pretty much an email to Daniel and to Neil, my lawyer and my accountant. It's like, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's is this possible to be vetted? So then Daniel goes, does his little thing, right, and say, okay, we should do an LLC. And then Neil kind of does the financials, like, is this can these be feasible? Then I just can start including you or the rest of the team as like, this is where we're gonna go. Then I started developing the business plan, and then as the business plan is getting developed, I started sharing information backwards with, it's most likely Gina at this point, to make sure that I am structuring everything correctly. I am putting all the financial pieces in the right places, and then
Okay,
kind of
so
structuring it that way.
for someone that doesn't already have an established team, because I have learned that's a big luxury in business,
Expensive luxury.
I mean, genuinely, what would that base level cost be to have a lawyer, to have an accountant, at least do that initial check?
Less than $1,000 probably.
Less than
I
$1,000?
think so. I mean, like, you could probably, if you find a good attorney, a business attorney, and then you say, hey, I'm a startup. I can promise you, we're gonna be the next Fortune 500 company, but I can promise you, we're gonna sell at least $100,000 worth of products. You can broker a deal with them, and the
Hmm.
deal could be as simple, hey, I'll pay you $500 up front, plus I give you 1 or 2% of the back end with revenue of the company, because then they're more tied to, okay, I'm taking a little gamble, but I can probably make some money in the back end,
And
right?
a lot of this stuff is pretty cut and clear. I've learned the more specific you are with your questions,
Mm-hmm.
the less time they take.
But
Because you said, I need to find out X, Y, and Z, or I need you. If you give them direction, then
another
it
thing too, like,
helps.
if for like us and Daniel, right, he's really invested in our company and our growth, because there is deals with them. But if you find at a small stage, if you find a lawyer that's willing to do like a back end deal like that with you, then they're gonna be invested in your growth, and they're gonna give you honest, true feedback and advice to scale your business, because that's gonna make more money for them in the back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the accounting, right? So with Tavalla, for the first like 4 or 5 years, I had a reduced rate, right? It wasn't until like recently when they started taxing us.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a back end deal. Like, okay, at the end of the day, a lot of businesses see the potential in your growth, and they want to have a customer for life. So if they can support you now, then when you get bigger, and we need contracts all the time
Yeah,
for,
but it's not.
things that we're doing. And Daniel knew that in the beginning. He knew, okay, if I work with them right now, I have a feeling that a lot more business is going to come my way. And he was able to make that calculated decision. But you had to advocate for yourself first. And
Mhm.
that's something you
Same
taught me.
And same thing with the accounting from Tavalla. You know what I'm saying? Like, for the first couple of years, like, hey, I'm a novice. I don't understand this market. And then Neil took time out of his schedule to teach me the reports, teach me financial literacy. And then, okay, like, as every single year passes, they know my financials like the back of their hands. They know what I can afford and cannot afford. And then when we got to the point that he's like, okay, now I'm gonna charge you my actual rate, say less. I'm not even gonna argue. You give me 4 or 5 years at reduced rate. You know what I'm saying? You gave me free knowledge. It's a win-win. So that's what I'm saying. Find good people that are willing to be invested not in the business but in you as an individual. And it doesn't matter how many different companies you'll go through, because as an entrepreneur, you're gonna have a lot of failures. You're gonna have a lot of businesses that are just gonna flop. You know what I'm saying? So Vala been with me out of like, I want to say 6 or 7 companies right now, and then so they know me better than I know myself probably.
And it is so, so nice to have a team that you can trust. I remember my mentor talking about that tool belt. As an entrepreneur, you should absolutely begin to establish your tool belt. And that includes the lawyer, the accountant, all of the people that have the skills that you need, but that you don't have time to do or the expertise to learn.
Yeah. There's not a like I said, you need to find what best works for you as an individual. If that is paying an accountant to file your LLC, because probably some accountants can't do that, some CPAs can't do that, and do your books for you, cool. If you have the luxury to find a business attorney that's willing to work with you in your small budget, great. And if you don't, do it your way. Open a Secretary of State and slowly build up over a period of time. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's
And
just,
there is so much information online. Just make sure that breaks it down in a very realistic way. So
Gangster.
just, even just understanding the questions to ask make a big difference.
I'm gonna recap it, right? So once you do a business plan, right? I want people to understand that business plan is pretty much a piece of paper to brainstorm with, to jot your ideas down.
And to
To
take time with your idea. What do you want this business to be? What are your values? To
Mhm.
put it all down on
Before you start
paper.
spending money and before you actually start spending your time. Spend like
Exactly.
4 or 5 hours and kind of think it through.
And a business plan helps you a lot with buy-in. Even if you don't need investors, if you're going to self-fund this project, if you are going to build a team at all, having a business plan legitimizes your idea, legitimizes the direction that you want to go to, and gives you a North Star.
hmm That's what I think the conclusion and the executive servings are the most important part of the business plan. Because at the end of the day, you're selling your visions to your employees, you're selling your visions to the banks, you're selling your visions to who's buying.
And of course, things are going to change as you get going, but it's good to do a gut check, especially if you are doing this for a very strong reason. Like you want to have this one goal that you want to achieve, or this vision that's really important to you. 6 months, a year down the line, being able to look back at your original business plan is so valuable to say, am I on track? How much has changed? What are my values like now? And I think it just provides this really helpful gut check for where you're going in your business.
I love that. I think you should evaluate every 6 months because everything starts changing really fast. But the reality is, if you love this type of content and you want to know more about our special projects, follow along in our series.
Yeah, what are you doing? Once again, if you're not subscribed, which I know, what did we talk about last time? Like 60% of the people
I think it
watching
was
this
like
video
70.
are not subscribed. We love that you're
crazy.
finding our content, but the thing is, we are having the transparent conversations about business, about scaling your business that most people don't talk about, and
I
that
think they're
feels
scared to talk about. We're not scared.
Yeah. I mean, at the end, it's just
Maybe a little bit.
there's so much knowledge
So much knowledge.
that there is to share. So follow along and check out our whole special project where we're launching a business from start to finish, so that you can see everything that goes into it and watch us succeed or fail, and we'll all do it on camera.
We will succeed. We're not failing.
Yeah, no room for failure. We're just pivoting. Awesome. See you next time.
Bye.